My millionaire husband humiliated and kicked me out of the house after his 8-year-old son's lies. Now my abandonment has made me stronger, the owner of the largest oil company in the country, and has turned their life and family upside down. She took it, Daddy. I saw her. She's a thief. The words came out of his mouth with practiced precision. 8 years old. Tears streaming down his cherubic face like he'd rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror. And my husband, Harrison Caldwell, millionaire investor, the man who'd promised to love and protect me, stood there looking at me like I was a criminal he'd just discovered living in his home. Harrison, please, you can't possibly believe this. I would never touch that watch. You know me. My voice cracked. My hands trembled. But his face had already gone cold. That's the thing about betrayal. You can see it happen in real time. You can watch someone's eyes turn from warm to ice in the span of a heartbeat. She hid it in her drawer, the boy whispered, burying his face in his father's shoulder. I saw her take it yesterday. I was scared to tell you. And just like that, 6 years of marriage evaporated. 6 years of being his wife, his partner, his son's mother. Gone, because an 8-year-old lied and his father chose to believe it. I want you out. Harrison's voice was surgical, clean, final. Tonight, I won't have a thief in my home, around my son. Your home? The words escaped before I could stop them. I've lived here for 6 years. I've raised him. I've been his mother. You are not his mother. The boy's shriek was so sudden, so violent, it made me flinch. I want her gone. She's always been mean to me when you're not here. Another lie. But I watched Harrison's hand land gently on his son's head. Protective, believing. And I knew. In that moment, I knew I'd already lost. Pack 1 suitcase. My lawyers will contact you about the rest. That was it. No investigation, no conversation, no trust, just exile. Hi everyone. My name is Sloan, and I learned that night that love, real love, is tested not in the good times, but in the moments when lies sound more convenient than truth. You'd think a man who built a fortune on calculated risks would know better than to believe an accusation without evidence. You'd think a husband who'd shared your bed for 6 years would demand proof before passing judgment. But Harrison Caldwell wasn't just any man. He was a millionaire whose first loyalty had always been to his son from his previous marriage. And I, the second wife, the geologist who'd abandoned her career for love, was always going to be expendable. That November evening is carved into my memory like fossils in sedimentary rock. Permanent, unmovable. The marble floors of our Connecticut estate felt cold even through my slippers. The chandelier above, the one I'd helped him pick out at that antique auction in Manhattan, cast shadows that seemed to dance with malice. And Miles, my stepson, stood in the center of it all, clutching his father's antique pocket watch. The one that had allegedly gone missing from Harrison's study. The one worth over $50,000 but priceless in sentiment. She hid it in her drawer. Miles's voice was small but deadly. I saw her. The watch had indeed been found in my dresser, planted there, I would later understand, with the precision of a child who'd learned. Manipulation from the nanny who'd been quietly poisoning him against me for months. But in that moment, standing in my own living room, I didn't understand any of it. I only understood that I was being accused, convicted, and sentenced all in the same breath. Sloan, Harrison's voice made me look up. Is this true? I remember my hands shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. I remember my voice breaking like glass. You can't possibly believe. Harrison, I would never. That watch means everything to you. Why would I take it? Why would I hide it in my own drawer where anyone could find it? This doesn't make any sense. But his face was already closed. Already decided. Miles buried his face deeper into his father's shoulder, and I saw it then. Just for a second. The smallest flicker of something in the boy's eyes as he peeked at me from his father's embrace. Not fear, not sadness, satisfaction. It hit me like a physical blow. This was planned. This was deliberate. But before I could process it, before I could find the words to explain what I'd just seen, Harrison spoke again. I want you out. Tonight. Harrison, please. Let's talk about this. Let's just sit down and figure out what really happened here. Please. There's nothing to figure out. The evidence is in your drawer. My son saw you take it. That's enough. That's enough. 2 words that sealed my fate. Please. I looked at Miles, desperate now. Miles, sweetheart, please tell your father the truth. You know I didn't take that watch. You know I would never steal from this family. The boy's face crumpled. His tears came harder. And when he spoke, his voice was so broken, so convincing, I almost believed him myself. Why are you lying? Why do you keep lying? You're always mean to me. You pinch me when Daddy's not looking. You say bad things about my real mommy. My mouth fell open. The accusation was so outrageous, so completely fabricated, I couldn't even formulate a response. That's enough. Harrison's voice rose for the first time. His arm went around his son, pulling him closer. That's enough, Miles. You don't have to say anything else. I believe you. He believes you. 4 words that destroyed me. Harrison turned to me then, and the man I'd loved, the man I'd given up everything for, looked at me like I was a stranger. Worse than a stranger, a threat. I want you out of this house in the next hour. Pack 1 suitcase. Essentials only. My attorneys will contact you tomorrow about retrieving the rest of your things and about the divorce proceedings. Divorce. The word hung in the air like smoke. You're divorcing me? Just like that. 6 years of marriage and you're divorcing me because of a watch and an 8-year-old's word. My son doesn't lie. Everyone lies, Harrison. Children especially. Please, just give me a chance to prove my innocence. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne. The same cologne I'd given him last Christmas. Get your things and go. I've already called a car service. They'll be here in 30 minutes. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. The coldness in his voice was something I'd never heard before. This wasn't the man who'd proposed to me under the stars in Cape Cod. This wasn't the man who'd cried when he told me about losing his first wife to cancer. This was someone else entirely. Or maybe this was who he'd always been, and I'd just been too blinded by love to see it. I looked around the living room, at the furniture we'd chosen together, at the photos on the mantel, pictures of our wedding, of family vacations, of Miles's birthday parties where I'd stayed up until midnight baking homemade cakes shaped like dinosaurs and superheroes. 6 years of my life decorated these walls. Fine. My voice came out stronger than I felt. I'll pack. I turned toward the stairs, and that's when I heard it. A voice from the doorway to the kitchen. Mr. Caldwell, is there anything I can do to help? Delilah, the nanny. She stood there in her pristine uniform, her face arranged in an expression of concern. But her eyes, God, her eyes were gleaming with something that looked an awful lot like victory. Everything clicked into place. The way she'd been undermining me with Miles for months. The way she always seemed to be whispering to the boy when I entered a room, then falling silent. The way she'd been dressing more carefully whenever Harrison was home, laughing, a little too loud at his jokes, touching his arm a little too frequently. She wanted my place, and she'd used an 8-year-old child to get it. I opened my mouth to say something, to accuse her, to explain. But what was the point? Harrison had already decided. He'd already chosen his son's word, and by extension this woman's manipulation over 6 years of knowing me. So I said nothing. I just climbed those stairs, each step feeling like walking to my own execution. The bedroom we'd shared looked the same as it had that morning. The bed was still unmade from where we'd slept the night before. His book was still on his nightstand. My slippers were still on my side of the bed. Everything looked normal, but nothing would ever be normal again. I pulled out the 1 suitcase he'd allowed me. 1 suitcase for 6 years of life. I opened my closet and looked at the rows of designer dresses. The Valentino he'd bought me for our anniversary. The Oscar de la Renta I'd worn to his company's Christmas gala. The Chanel suit I'd purchased for his business partner's wedding. I left them all. Instead, I reached to the back of the closet, to the section I rarely touched anymore. My old clothes, the ones from before, the worn jeans I'd worn in the field, the university sweatshirts with faded logos, the practical jackets that had kept me warm in North Dakota oil fields, the steel-toed boots I'd worn on drilling sites. I packed those, because those clothes remembered who I'd been before I became Mrs. Harrison Caldwell, before I became the woman who smiled at dinner parties and volunteered at school fundraisers, and pretended that giving up her career for love had been a choice instead of a sacrifice. Next, I went to my desk. My field notebooks were still there, tucked away in the bottom drawer. 7 notebooks filled with geological surveys, rock formation analyses, notes on shale deposits, and hydraulic fracturing techniques. The work I'd done before I met Harrison. The work that had made me one of the most promising petroleum geologists on the East Coast before I was 30. I packed those too. Then I grabbed my laptop, my phone charger, and the few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my mother. Everything else, the diamonds Harrison had given me, the pearls, the emerald earrings I left on the dresser. I didn't want anything that tied me to this life, to this lie. The packing took me 20 minutes. When I was done, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room one last time. I thought I might cry. I thought the enormity of what was happening would hit me and I'd break down. But I didn't cry. I was too numb, too shattered, too disoriented by how quickly a life could end. A knock on the door made me look up. "The car is here." Harrison stood in the doorway. He wouldn't even come into the room. Wouldn't look at me directly. I stood, grabbed my suitcase, and walked toward the door. As I passed him, I stopped. "I didn't take that watch, Harrison, and Miles is lying. I don't know why, but he is. And someday you're going to realize that. Someday you're going to understand what you threw away tonight. And I really hope, that when that day comes, you remember this moment." He said nothing, just stepped aside to let me pass. I walked down those stairs for the last time. Miles was nowhere to be seen. Delilah was still hovering near the kitchen, and as I passed her, she had the audacity to speak. "I'm so sorry this happened, Mrs. Caldwell. I'm sure this must be very difficult for you." I stopped, looked her directly in the eye. "You won't win. Whatever you think you're getting out of this, it won't be worth it." Her smile was small but unmistakable. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Then I walked out the front door. The November air hit me like a slap. Cold, merciless. The car service was waiting in the circular driveway, exhaust puffing in the freezing air. The driver got out and took my suitcase, loading it into the trunk without a word. He'd probably been told not to speak to me, told I was being removed from the property. I slid into the back seat, and as the car pulled away, I looked back at the house. Our house, the place I'd called home for 6 years, the place where I'd tried so hard to build a family. Miles was at his bedroom window, standing there, watching, and he wasn't crying anymore. His face was calm, neutral, the face of a child who'd gotten exactly what he wanted. The gate closed behind us, and just like that, I was on the other side, outside, expelled, erased. "Where to, ma'am?" The driver's voice was gentle, kind, even. I gave him the address of the only place I could think of, a Holiday Inn off I-95. Not because I wanted to go there, but because I literally had nowhere else. The drive took 40 minutes. I spent the entire time staring out the window at the passing lights, at the other cars full of people living their normal lives, at the world that had kept spinning while mine had stopped. When we pulled into the Holiday Inn parking lot, the driver helped me with my suitcase. "I'm sorry, ma'am, for whatever you're going through." He said it quietly, respectfully. "Thank you." I checked in at the front desk. The clerk barely looked at me, just handed me a key card and directed me to the second floor, room 247. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Generic beige walls, polyester bedspread, landscape painting that had been mass-produced in some factory, the smell of industrial cleaning products and other people's lives. I set my suitcase down, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally, the numbness began to crack. But I still didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I had 17 missed calls. For a moment, my heart leaped. Maybe Harrison had realized his mistake. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to tell me to come home. But the calls weren't from Harrison. They were from friends. Well, his friends, really. People from our social circle who'd already heard the news. Word traveled fast in Connecticut's wealthy enclaves. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I already knew what they'd say. Shock, disbelief, carefully worded questions about what had really happened, judgment disguised as concern. Instead, I opened my banking app. I needed to know what I was working with, what resources I had. My personal checking account, the one I'd maintained separately from our joint accounts, had $12,347, money I'd saved from before the marriage and never touched. It had just sat there, accumulating a pathetic amount of interest while I'd lived off Harrison's wealth. $12,000. That's what 6 years had left me with. That's what I had to restart my life. I should have cried then, should have broken down, should have felt the full weight of how completely I'd been destroyed. But instead, I felt something else, something cold, something hard, something that felt almost like clarity. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen. Then I opened my email and began typing. The first email was to Dr. Patricia Reeves, my mentor from graduate school, the woman who'd told me I was the most gifted geologist she'd ever taught, the woman who'd been disappointed when I'd called her 6 years ago to say I was leaving the field to get married. Dr. Reeves, it's Sloan Whitmore. I know it's been a long time. I'm writing to ask if there are any consulting opportunities available in petroleum geology. I'm ready to come back to the field. Please let me know if you've heard of anything. Best, Sloan. Short, professional, desperate. The second email was to James Burton, a former colleague who'd moved to a boutique energy consulting firm in Houston. We'd worked together on a shale deposit analysis in Pennsylvania back before I'd given everything up. James. Sloan Whitmore here. Long time, no contact. I'm looking to get back into petroleum geology and consulting. If you hear of any opportunities, I'd appreciate you keeping me in mind. I'm willing to relocate. Thanks, Sloan. The third email was the hardest to write. It was to Joanna Cross, a venture capitalist I'd met exactly once at one of Harrison's networking events 2 years ago. She'd given me her card and said something I'd never forgotten. If you ever want to talk about something other than being arm candy, call me. You're too smart to be wasted on dinner party small talk. I'd kept her card, tucked away in my wallet, a talisman of a life I'd given up. Miss Cross, we met 2 years ago at the Caldwell Industries networking event in Manhattan. You gave me your card and told me to call if I ever wanted to discuss opportunities. I'm a petroleum geologist with expertise in shale formations and hydraulic fracturing. I'm looking for consulting work or partnership opportunities. I'm attaching my CV. I hope to hear from you. Sloan Whitmore. I hit send on all 3 emails. Then I closed my laptop and finally let myself feel it. The betrayal, the injustice, the absolute devastation of watching your husband believe a lie instead of trusting the woman he'd promised to love for the rest of his life. And that's when the tears came. Not gentle tears, not sad tears, angry tears, furious tears, the kind of crying that leaves you gasping and hollow. I cried for the career I'd abandoned. I cried for the 6 years I'd given to a man who'd thrown me away like trash. I cried for the little boy I'd loved like my own, who'd looked me in the eye and lied without hesitation. I cried for the woman I'd been before Harrison, the woman who'd been confident and capable and brilliant, and who'd somehow let herself become small enough to fit into someone else's life. I cried until I had nothing left, until my eyes were swollen and my throat was raw and my chest ached. And then I stopped. I got up. I washed my face in the tiny bathroom with the harsh fluorescent lighting. I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. My eyes were red. My face was blotchy. My hair was a mess. I looked destroyed, but I was still here, still breathing, still standing. You're going to survive this. I said it out loud to my reflection. You're going to survive this, and you're going to make sure they never forget what they threw away. I didn't know how yet, didn't know what that would look like, but I knew with absolute certainty that I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. I went back to the bed, set an alarm on my phone, and forced myself to sleep. Tomorrow, I would figure out the next step. Tonight, I just needed to survive. If you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever been accused of something you didn't do, if you've ever felt the ground disappear beneath your feet while someone you loved watched without trying to catch you, then you know exactly how that first night felt. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Dr. Phillips. Because this story, this journey from that hotel room to where I am now, it's going to show you that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the beginning of the best thing. So stick with me. Hit that like button if you're ready to see how this unfolds. Because trust me, you want to see what happens next. I woke up the next morning to sunlight cutting through the cheap curtains. For a moment, just a brief, merciful moment, I forgot where I was. Forgot what had happened. My hand reached across the bed, expecting to find Harrison. Empty sheets, scratchy, unfamiliar, and then it all came rushing back. The watch, the accusation, Miles's tears, Harrison's cold voice, the suitcase, the car, the exile. I grabbed my phone. 7:43 a.m. I'd slept for 9 hours. My body had shut down, self-preservation in its most basic form. I had 3 new emails. The first was from Harrison's attorney. The subject line read, "Caldwell Divorce Proceedings." I didn't open it. Couldn't. Not yet. The second was from Dr. Patricia Reeves. My heart jumped. "Sloan, what a surprise to hear from you. I'm consulting on a wildcatting project in West Texas right now. Small operation, high risk, but they need someone who can read geological surveys like poetry. Pay isn't amazing, but it's honest work in the field. Interested? We can talk today if you're serious about coming back. Patricia." I read it 3 times. West Texas, wildcatting, high risk. 6 months ago, I would have said no. Too risky, too far from Harrison, too disruptive to our life. But I didn't have a life to disrupt anymore. "I'm very interested," I typed back. "Can we talk this morning? I'm available anytime. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you for remembering me." The third email was from Joanna Cross, sent at 6:15 a.m. The woman clearly didn't sleep. "Sloan, I remember you. Smart woman wasted on that stuffed shirt husband. Sorry if that's harsh, but I call it like I see it. I'm intrigued. Let's talk. Can you do a call at 10 a.m. Eastern today? I'm in San Francisco, but I'll make time. Joanna." My stuffed shirt husband. 3 days ago, I would have been offended. Now, the description felt almost generous. 10 a.m. works perfectly. I'll call you then. Thank you for responding so quickly. 2 opportunities in less than 12 hours. I'd sent 3 emails into the void, expecting nothing, and I'd gotten 2 responses. Maybe the universe wasn't completely against me. I got up, showered in the tiny fiberglass stall, and put on some of my old field clothes. Jeans, a button-down shirt, my university sweatshirt. Looking at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. For 6 years, I'd worn designer clothes and carefully applied makeup and styled hair. I'd been polished, presentable, perfect. This woman in the mirror looked raw, real, and somehow more like me than I'd looked in years. I walked to the gas station next door and bought terrible coffee and a prepackaged muffin, breakfast of champions. Then I sat in my hotel room and opened my laptop. The email from Harrison's attorney couldn't be avoided forever. I clicked it open. "Mrs. Caldwell, please find attached the preliminary divorce settlement offer from Mr. Harrison Caldwell. Given the brevity of the marriage and the prenuptial agreement you signed, the settlement is straightforward. Mr. Caldwell is offering $50,000 and the vehicle registered. In your name, a 2019 Lexus ES 350. In exchange, you will sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the circumstances of the divorce and relinquish any claim to marital assets, property, or future earnings. Please review with your attorney and respond within 7 business days. Regards, Mitchell Brennan, attorney at law." I sat there, staring at the screen. $50,000. For 6 years of my life, for abandoning my career, for raising his son, for building a home and hosting his business associates and playing the perfect wife. $50,000 in a car, and a non-disclosure agreement. He wanted to make sure I couldn't tell anyone what had really happened, couldn't damage his reputation, couldn't expose his son's lies or his own willingness to believe them. I should have been angry, should have been plotting how to fight it, how to get a better settlement, how to make him pay, but instead, I laughed. It came out harsh and bitter, echoing in the empty hotel room. He thought $50,000 would shut me up. He thought a car and a gag order would make me disappear quietly. He'd forgotten who I was, what I was capable of, what I'd given up to be with him. I closed the email without responding. Mitchell Brennan could wait. At exactly 10 a.m., I called Joanna Cross. She answered on the first ring. "Sloan." Her voice was sharp, efficient. "Tell me what happened. Why are you suddenly looking for work after 6 years of playing housefrau?" I could have lied. Could have given her some polished story about wanting to re-engage with my career, about missing the work, about personal growth. But something about Joanna's directness demanded honesty. My husband kicked me out 2 nights ago. His 8-year-old son accused me of stealing a family heirloom. Harrison believed him without question. I'm currently living in a Holiday Inn with 1 suitcase and $12,000 to my name. I need work. I need it fast. and I need to prove to myself that I'm more than what he reduced me to. Silence on the other end. Then, a low whistle. Well, that's refreshingly honest. Did you steal it? No. Do you have a lawyer? Not yet. Get one. Fight for a better settlement. You gave up your career for that marriage. You're entitled to more than whatever lowball offer his attorney sent you. I'm not interested in fighting for his money. Why not? Because I don't want anything from him. I want to build something that's entirely mine. Something he can't touch. Something that proves I never needed him in the first place. Another pause. Then Joanna laughed. A real laugh, warm and surprised. Okay, I like you. Here's the situation. I'm putting together an investment group. We're buying distressed oil and gas assets. Wells the major companies have written off as tapped out or too expensive to maintain. We bring in experts to reassess them with fresh eyes and modern techniques. If there's oil there, we extract it. If not, we cut our losses and move on. It's high risk, high reward. I need a geologist who can look at abandoned wells and tell me if there's anything worth pursuing. Interested? Very interested. It's not a salary position. It's equity. You'd be a partner. Small stake initially, maybe 5%, but it grows as we succeed. You'd need to invest some capital to buy in. Say, $10,000. My entire safety net. Almost everything I had. I'll do it. You didn't even hesitate. I don't have the luxury of hesitation anymore. Good. I'm sending you the partnership papers today. We have our first potential acquisition in Oklahoma. Cluster of wells that ConocoPhillips capped 5 years ago. Everyone says there's nothing there. I need you to tell me if everyone is wrong. Can you get to Oklahoma City by Monday? Today was Friday. 3 days. I'll be there. Perfect. Welcome to Cross Energy Solutions, Sloan. Don't make me regret this. I won't. I hung up and sat there, my heart pounding. I'd just committed $10,000, almost everything I had, to a partnership with a woman I'd met once, based on a phone call and a leap of faith. 6 months ago, I would have consulted Harrison, would have asked his opinion, would have sought his approval, but I wasn't that woman anymore. That woman died the moment Harrison chose his son's lies over 6 years of truth. This woman, the one sitting in a Holiday Inn with an uncertain future, trusted herself. My phone rang again. Dr. Patricia Reeves. Sloan, good to hear your voice. Tell me, are you serious about coming back to the field? Because this isn't a desk job. This is 12-hour days in 100-degree heat. This is arguing with drillers who don't want to take direction from a woman. This is getting your hands dirty and your boots muddy and proving yourself all over again. Can you handle that? I thought about the mansion in Connecticut, the marble floors, the charity luncheons, the careful performance of being Mrs. Harrison Caldwell. Dr. Reeves, I would rather spend 12 hours in the Texas heat doing real work than one more minute in a mansion pretending to be someone I'm not. When do I start? How soon can you get to Midland? Is Monday too soon? Monday's perfect. I'll send you the details. Welcome back, Sloan. I've missed having you in the field. 2 jobs. 2 opportunities. Both starting Monday. I called Dr. Reeves back. Patricia, I need to ask. Could I do both? Consulting for your Texas project during the week and flying to Oklahoma on weekends for assessments? I know it's a lot, but I need to rebuild fast. You're hungry. I like it. Yeah, we can make that work. The Texas project is going to be intense, but if you can handle the schedule, I won't stop you. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me. Sloan, I always believed in you. You're the one who forgot. She hung up, and I sat there in that dingy hotel room, and for the first time in 2 days, I felt something other than devastation. I felt possibility. I spent the rest of Friday and all of Saturday preparing. I reviewed my old geological notes. I researched the latest hydraulic fracturing techniques. I studied seismic imaging technology that had advanced in the 6 years I'd been away from the field. I read industry reports and oil production forecasts and market analyses. I also bought a plane ticket to Midland, Texas, one way, because I wasn't coming back to Connecticut. There was nothing here for me anymore. Sunday morning, I checked out of the Holiday Inn. The clerk was the same woman who checked me in. I hope your stay was pleasant. It was exactly what I needed. I loaded my single suitcase into the Lexus that Harrison had so generously allowed me to keep, and I drove to the airport. I left the car in long-term parking. I'd figure out what to do with it later. Right now, I needed to travel light. The flight to Midland was 3.5 hours. I spent the entire time reviewing geological surveys Dr. Reeves had emailed me. The project was a wildcatting operation, meaning they were drilling in an area with no proven oil reserves. High risk. Most wildcatting operations failed, but when they succeeded big. The surveys looked promising to me. There was a formation there deep that everyone else seemed to have dismissed as non-viable. But I saw something, a shadow in the seismic data, a possibility. I landed in Midland at 4 p.m. The heat hit me the moment I stepped off the plane. Dry, intense, nothing like Connecticut's humid summers. This was desert heat, honest heat. Dr. Reeves picked me up at the airport in a dusty pickup truck. She looked exactly as I remembered. 60-something, weathered skin, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. Sloan. She hugged me briefly. You look different. I am different. Good. The old you was brilliant, but she was too willing to make herself small. I'm hoping this version knows her worth. I'm learning. The drive to the drilling site took 40 minutes. The landscape was flat, endless, dotted with oil derricks and sagebrush. The sky was so big it felt like you could see the curvature of the earth. This is it. Dr. Reeves pulled up to a cluster of trailers and equipment. Home for the next few months if you're staying. Your trailer is the one on the end. Nothing fancy. But it's yours. My trailer was exactly as advertised. Nothing fancy. A bed, a desk, a tiny bathroom, a mini fridge. Probably 200 square feet total. It was perfect. I dropped my suitcase and reported to the site's supervisor, a man named Rick who looked like he'd been born wearing a hard hat. You're the geologist? I am. He looked me up and down, skeptical. You ever worked a rig before? 5 years before I took a break. North Dakota, Pennsylvania, and a brief stint in Wyoming. Why'd you take a break? Got married. He grunted. And now? Now I'm not married. He almost smiled. Well, we need someone who can tell us if we're wasting our time and money out here. Think you can do that? I can. Then, get to work. We drill on Wednesday. You've got 2 days to tell me where to put the bit. I spent those 2 days doing what I loved, what I'd been born to do. I analyzed the seismic surveys. I examined the core samples they'd already pulled. I studied the rock formations, the geological history of the area, the pressure systems underground. And I found it. The thing everyone else had missed. There was a tight oil formation, unconventional, about 8,500 feet down. It was at an odd angle, which was why the previous surveys had dismissed it. But with modern hydraulic fracturing, with the right drilling approach, it was absolutely viable. On Wednesday morning, I presented my findings to Rick and his crew. I want you to drill here. I pointed to the map. 8,500 feet at this angle. You're going to hit a tight oil formation that's been overlooked because it's perpendicular to the usual drilling pattern. The crew exchanged glances. One of them, a driller named Tommy who'd been working rigs for 30 years, spoke up. Ma'am, no disrespect, but we've surveyed this area 6 ways from Sunday. There's nothing at that angle. Then you surveyed it wrong. The room went quiet. Rick looked at me. You sure about this? I'm sure. If you're wrong, we just wasted $2 million and 3 months of work. I'm not wrong. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, we drill where the geologist says. Let's get to work. They drilled for 72 hours straight. I didn't sleep. Just stayed on site, watching the depth gauge, monitoring the rock samples as they came up, adjusting my calculations. At hour 71, at 8,520 feet, the pressure changed. Rick saw it first. His head snapped up. We got something. The crew started moving faster. Equipment humming, voices rising in excitement. And then, at 72 hours and 14 minutes, the well erupted. Black gold shooting into the Texas sky. The crew erupted too, cheering, whooping, slapping each other on the back. Rick walked over to me, a huge grin on his weathered face. How much? I did the math in my head based on the pressure readings and the flow rate. Conservative estimate? 15 million barrels of recoverable reserves. His eyes widened. 15 million? Give or take. He let out a whoop and grabbed me in a bear hug. You just saved this project. You know that? You just made us all very, very happy. I just did my job. But it felt like more than that. It felt like proof. Proof that I was still good at this. That 6 years away hadn't erased my skills. That I was more than Harrison's discarded wife. That night, Joanna Cross called me. I heard about the Texas strike. Was that you? I tried to sound modest. Partly. Don't be coy, Sloan. My sources say you turned a guaranteed dry hole into a gusher. 15 million barrels? That's the estimate. She laughed. You just tripled your value to me. Get to Oklahoma this weekend. I want to see if you can do it twice. I flew to Oklahoma City on Friday night. Exhausted, running on adrenaline and terrible coffee and the high of being right. Joanna met me at a diner near the well site. She was exactly as I remembered. Late 40s, impeccably dressed despite the oil field setting, sharp eyes that miss nothing. Show me what you've got. She slid a folder across the table. These are the surveys for the Oklahoma wells. ConocoPhillips capped them 5 years ago. Said they were tapped out. I paid $2 million for the whole cluster. Tell me if I'm an idiot. I spent the next 2 weeks in Oklahoma, living in another trailer, running survey after survey. And I found it again. That thing everyone else had missed. A horizontal formation running perpendicular to the original vertical wells. ConocoPhillips had drilled down, but the oil was running sideways. With hydraulic fracturing, with horizontal drilling techniques, it was absolutely accessible. I presented my findings to Joanna in the middle of a muddy field, both of us wearing hard hats. Drill here, here, and here. I pointed to my marked map. Horizontal wells, 7,500 to 8,000 feet. You're sitting on at least 50 million barrels. She looked at the map, looked at me. You're certain? I'm certain. What's it going to cost to extract? I ran the numbers. Equipment, labor, time, permits. About 8 million for the first phase. And if you're wrong, then you're out 10 million total and I lose my partnership stake. She smiled. But you're not wrong, are you? No, I'm not. We drilled the first well in early December. Hit oil at 8,000 feet. The second well hit at 7,500 feet. By the fourth well, we knew. 50 million barrels, maybe more. Cross Energy Solutions, the company that had been worth $3 million in assets, was now worth 30 million. Then 60 million. My 5% stake, bought with $10,000 of my last remaining money, was now worth $3 million. $3 million. In 6 weeks. But more than the money, more than the validation, I felt something else. I felt free. Free from being Harrison's wife. Free from being defined by his wealth. Free from the woman who'd made herself small enough to fit into someone else's life. I was Sloan Whitmore again. Dr. Sloan Whitmore, the geologist who could see oil where others saw dust. And I was just getting started. If you're loving this comeback story, if you're feeling inspired by watching Sloan rebuild herself from nothing, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me, what would you do in her situation? Would you take the risk like she did or play it safe? Let me know where you're watching from or just say I'm with you, Dr. Phillips. And make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to get even better. Sloan's not done yet. Not by a long shot. Christmas came and went. I spent it in Oklahoma in a trailer, eating gas station sandwiches and reviewing seismic data. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. Because it was mine. My choice. My work. My future. I didn't hear from Harrison. Didn't expect to. His attorney sent 2 follow-up emails about the settlement offer, both of which I ignored. I'd gotten my own attorney by then, a sharp woman named Rachel Chen, who'd laughed when she saw Harrison's $50,000 offer. He's insulting you. She'd said it flatly. You gave up a career, you contributed 6 years to that household, you raised his son. You're entitled to way more than this. I don't want more of his money, Rachel. I just don't want to sign that non-disclosure agreement. Good. Because silence is worth more than $50,000. Let him sweat. By January, Cross Energy was valued at $90 million. We'd brought in 3 more distressed assets, and I'd found viable reserves in 2 of them. My reputation in the industry was rebuilding fast. People who'd forgotten I existed were suddenly calling. Job offers, partnership opportunities, speaking invitations. And then, in early February, Joanna called with the big one. Vector Energy is in trouble. She said it without preamble. They overextended, made bad acquisitions, and now they're looking to sell. I want to buy them. We'd go from a boutique operation to a major independent producer overnight. Interested in being part of that? Vector Energy, the company I'd worked for before my marriage, the company that had offered me senior positions that I'd turned down to be Harrison's wife. The irony was almost too perfect. How much? The acquisition? $300 million. We'd need to secure financing, bring in more investors, but I think we can do it. And Sloan, if we pull this off, your stake would be worth about $20 million. $20 million. From $12,000 in a checking account to $20 million in 4 months. It should have felt impossible, but it didn't, because I'd earned every single dollar, every well I'd assessed, every formation I'd identified, every risk I'd taken. Let's do it. The Vector Energy acquisition took 3 months to close. Financing, due diligence, negotiations. I was involved in every step, and I loved it. And then one day in May, exactly 6 months after Harrison had kicked me out, I stood in a conference room in Houston and signed the papers that made me a part owner of Vector Energy. My stake in Cross Energy Solutions was now worth $22 million. $22 million. I walked out of that conference room and stood on the street in downtown Houston, and I felt it. The full weight of what I'd done. I'd gone from abandoned wife to multi-millionaire in half a year. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I looked at Harrison's social media. His last post was from 3 weeks ago. A picture of Miles at a baseball game. The caption read, "My whole world." No mention of me. I'd been erased, like I'd never existed. But that was okay, because he was about to find out that the woman he'd erased had become someone he couldn't ignore. I stood there on that Houston street, my phone in my hand, staring at Harrison's post. My whole world. Miles. Just Miles. For 6 years, I'd tried to be part of that world. I'd read bedtime stories and attended soccer games and helped with homework and made Halloween costumes from scratch. I'd been there for every milestone, every scraped knee, every nightmare, and I'd been erased like I never existed. I should have felt angry, should have felt hurt, but instead, I felt nothing but a distant sort of pity, because while Harrison's whole world was an 8-year-old boy who'd learned to lie to get what he wanted, my world was expanding every single day. I put my phone away and walked to my car. Not the Lexus anymore. I'd sold that back in January and bought myself a Range Rover. Paid in cash. Because I could. My apartment wasn't far from the office. I'd bought it in March. A penthouse in Midtown Houston with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the skyline. 2,200 square feet. Nothing compared to the Connecticut mansion, but it was mine. My name on the deed. My furniture. My space. I walked in and dropped my bag on the marble counter. Real marble, not the cultured stuff. I'd earned the right to real marble. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sloan? The voice was tentative. Female. Familiar, but I couldn't place it. This is Sloan. It's Teresa. Teresa Morrison. We used to run in the same circles back in Connecticut. Teresa, Harrison's friend's wife. The one who'd always been polite, but distant. The one who'd never quite accepted me into the inner circle of Connecticut wealth. Teresa. Hi. What can I do for you? I'm in Houston for a conference. I saw your name on a panel discussion about women in energy leadership. I couldn't believe it was you. Is it really you? It's really me. Can we meet for coffee? I'd love to catch up. Curiosity got the better of me. Sure. When were you thinking? Tomorrow morning? There's a place called Blacksmith near the convention center. I know it. 10 a.m. Perfect. See you then. She hung up, and I stood there wondering what that was about. Teresa Morrison didn't do anything without a reason. This wasn't a social call. This was reconnaissance. Fine. Let her look. Let her report back to Connecticut about what had become of poor abandoned Sloan. I showed up at Blacksmith at exactly 10 a.m. wearing a Tom Ford suit that cost more than Harrison's settlement offer. My hair was professionally styled. My nails were manicured. My confidence was genuine. Teresa was already there, sitting in a corner booth. When she saw me walk in, her mouth literally fell open. Sloan, oh my God, you look amazing. Thank you. I slid into the booth across from her. You look well too. She did look well. Expensive well, but there was something else in her eyes, something that looked like guilt. I ordered a cappuccino. Teresa fidgeted with her own cup. I'm just going to say it. I owe you an apology. For what? for not reaching out after everything happened, for not questioning the story, for just accepting Harrison's version of events without even asking for yours. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. We all just assumed. She continued, "You know how it is. He's Harrison Caldwell, respected businessman, devoted father. When he said you'd stolen from him, when he said you'd been cruel to Miles, we just believed it." "Did you believe it?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "Honestly? No, I never believed you were capable of that. But it was easier to go along with the narrative than to question it. I'm sorry for that. Apology noted. Can I ask what really happened?" His 8-year-old son lied. His nanny manipulated the situation because she wanted my place. And Harrison chose to believe them without even asking for my side of the story. Teresa closed her eyes. "I thought so. Miles has been in therapy. Did you know that?" "I'd heard. He's having behavioral issues, lying, acting out. They had to pull him from Westbrook Academy. Apparently he's been caught in multiple lies at school. Big ones, the kind that get other kids in trouble. Karma comes for everyone eventually. And Harrison's business." Teresa leaned forward. "It's struggling. He made some bad investments right after you left. Tech startups that folded, real estate that tanked. He's hemorrhaging money." I kept my face neutral. "That's unfortunate. The house is on the market. The estate. He's downsizing." My heart did a little flip at that. The mansion, the place I'd been dragged out of like a criminal, on the market. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you, though?" I met her eyes. "No, not really." She laughed. A real laugh. "Fair enough. For what it's worth, people are starting to figure out the truth about you, about what really happened. Word gets around. And when they see what you've built, how far you've come in just 6 months, they're putting the pieces together." "What pieces?" "That Harrison Caldwell threw away the best thing that ever happened to him." I didn't respond to that. Just sipped my coffee. "Can I ask you something?" Teresa's voice was quieter now. "How did you do it? 6 months ago, you had nothing. Now you're a partner in an energy company. You're speaking at conferences. You're on panels. How?" I remembered who I was before I met Harrison. I stopped making myself small to fit into someone else's life. And I took risks. Just like that. Just like that. She shook her head in wonder. "You're amazing. You know that? I'm just someone who refused to stay down." We talked for another 20 minutes. Teresa told me about Connecticut, about the gossip, about how Delilah the nanny had gotten fired after Harrison discovered she'd been stealing from him too. Actual stealing. Jewelry. Cash. Small amounts at first, then bigger. The irony was exquisite. She told me that Miles had finally confessed about the watch, told his therapist, who told Harrison that the whole thing had been Delilah's idea, that she'd convinced the 8-year-old that if I was gone, things would go back to how they were before, when it was just Miles and Harrison. "And how did Harrison react?" I asked. Teresa looked down at her cup. "I heard he cried for 2 days straight." "Good. Sloan. No, I mean it. Good. He should cry. He should feel every ounce of what he put me through. Crying for 2 days doesn't even begin to cover it. Have you talked to him?" "No. Would you? If he reached out?" "I don't know. But I did know." The answer was no. Harrison had made his choice. He'd chosen to believe a lie over 6 years of truth. He'd chosen to throw me out without investigation, without conversation, without trust. Nothing he could say now would change that. Teresa and I parted ways with promises to stay in touch. Promises I knew neither of us would keep. She was part of a world I'd left behind. A world I didn't want back. I went back to work. Because work was where I made sense now. Work was where I had value. Work was where I was building something that could never be taken from me. The months blurred together. June, July, August. Cross Energy Solutions continued to grow. We acquired 2 more distressed assets. I found viable reserves in both. My reputation in the industry went from rebuilding to solidified. I wasn't just the geologist who'd gotten lucky. I was the geologist who could see what others couldn't. In September, Joanna approached me about going public, taking Cross Energy Solutions to an IPO. "We're ready." She said it with absolute confidence. "We've got proven reserves, solid financials, and a track record of success. I think we could IPO at $15 to $18 a share. Interested? What would that mean for my stake? If we IPO at 18 and the stock performs well, you're looking at somewhere between $50 and $80 million, depending on how the market responds. $50 to $80 million. I thought about the $12,000 I'd had in my checking account 10 months ago. I thought about the Holiday Inn. I thought about Harrison's settlement offer of $50,000. Let's do it. The IPO process took 2 months. Roadshows, investor meetings, SEC filings. I was involved in all of it, standing in front of rooms full of Wall Street analysts and explaining our business model, our geological assessment process, our growth trajectory. And they listened, because I knew what I was talking about, because I had the track record to back it up, because I was Dr. Sloan Whitmore, and I'd proven I could turn abandoned wells into gold mines. Cross Energy Solutions went public on November 15th, exactly 1 year and 1 day after Harrison had kicked me out of his house. We IPO'd at $18 a share. By the end of the first day of trading, we closed at $32 a share. My stake was worth $76 million. $76 million. I stood on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange wearing a white Chanel suit that cost more than my first car, and I rang the opening bell. Cameras flashed. Reporters asked questions. Joanna stood beside me, grinning like she'd won the lottery. How does it feel? A reporter shoved a microphone in my face. It feels like proof. Proof of what? That your value doesn't change based on who can't see it. The clip went viral. By that evening, it had 500,000 views. By the next morning, it was trending, and my phone started ringing. Interview requests, speaking invitations, even a call from a literary agent asking if I'd considered writing a book about my journey. But the call I was waiting for never came. Harrison stayed silent. Good. I didn't need his validation anymore. December came. The anniversary of my worst month was now the celebration of my best year. I'd gone from abandoned wife to self-made multimillionaire in 12 months. The business press was obsessed with the story. Forbes ran a profile titled, "From Housewife to 100 Millionaire, the Sloan Whitmore Story." The Wall Street Journal did a deep dive on my geological methods. Bloomberg interviewed me about the future of independent oil production, and in every interview, I kept my personal life vague. I mentioned I'd been married, that it ended, that I'd returned to my career. But I never mentioned Harrison by name, never mentioned Miles, never mentioned the betrayal that had started it all. Because my story wasn't about them anymore. It had never really been about them. It was about a woman who'd forgotten who she was and then remembered. A woman who'd been told she was worthless and proved otherwise. A woman who'd lost everything and built an empire from the ashes. On December 20th, exactly 13 months after the expulsion, I was working late in my office when my assistant buzzed. "Ms. Whitmore, there's a call for you." He says it's personal. A Harrison Caldwell. My hand froze over my keyboard. "I'll take it." I picked up the phone and said nothing. Just waited. Sloan. His voice was rough, broken, nothing like the cold, confident tone he'd used that November night. "It's Harrison. I know. I need to talk to you. Not about the divorce. That's done. I know that. But about what happened, about what I did. What about it?" Miles has been in therapy. A lot of therapy, and some things have come to light. Things I should have known. Things I should have believed when you tried to tell me. Such as? He lied. His voice cracked. About the watch. About you being cruel to him. About everything. The therapist got it out of him. And Delilah, the nanny, she was behind it. She was manipulating him, trying to get rid of you so she could take your place. I found out she was stealing from me too. Actual stealing, not the imagined kind I accused you of. I see. Sloan, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have investigated. I should have known that you would never do what he accused you of. You spent 6 years loving that boy like he was your own, and I threw you out based on one accusation. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The apology I'd once dreamed of hearing. The words I'd thought would heal me. They meant nothing now. Okay. That's it? What else do you want me to say, Harrison? I want you to tell me you forgive me. I want you to tell me we can talk about this properly. I want you to give me a chance to make this right. You can't make this right. Sloan, please. You believed an 8-year-old child and a nanny over your wife. Over 6 years of marriage. You kicked me out of my home without even asking for my side of the story. You divorced me and offered me $50,000 like I was a problem you could pay to go away. What exactly do you think you can make right? I was protecting my son. You were choosing the easy narrative over the complicated truth. And that's fine. That was your choice. But choices have consequences. Sloan, I'm not the same woman you married. I'm not even the same woman you threw away. That person is gone. And honestly, Harrison, I'm grateful to you. Grateful? He sounded shocked. You forced me to remember who I was before I gave up everything to be your wife. You made me rebuild myself from nothing. And in doing so, I became someone I'm actually proud to be. Someone who doesn't need your name or your money or your approval. So yes, grateful. I've made terrible mistakes. Yes, you have. My business is failing. The house is being sold. Everything is falling apart. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you, though? I thought about lying, about being polite. But I was done with politeness for the sake of someone else's comfort. No, not really. He was quiet for a long moment. I saw the Forbes article, the Bloomberg interview. You own an oil company now. I'm a partner in one, yes. You're worth millions. I'm worth what I always was, Harrison. You just couldn't see it. Sloan, please, can we meet? Just once? I need to see you. I need to explain properly. No, just once. Coffee. 30 minutes. Harrison, I have a meeting with the Secretary of Energy tomorrow morning. I have congressional testimony about domestic oil production next week. I have an empire to run. I don't have 30 minutes to spare on a man who couldn't spare 30 seconds to believe me when it mattered. I still love you. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having a wife who made your life easier. You maybe even love the woman you thought I was. But you never loved me. Because if you had, you would have known I was incapable of what you accused me of. I'm sorry. I know. And Harrison, for what it's worth, I do forgive you. You do? Yes. Because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I forgive you for not trusting me. I forgive you for believing lies. I forgive you for throwing me away. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm not carrying your mistakes anymore. So that's it? We're done? We've been done for 13 months. You're just realizing it now. Can I at least see you someday? When enough time has passed, maybe, Harrison. When it doesn't matter anymore. And I hung up. I sat there in my office, looking out at the Houston skyline. The lights of the city spread out below me like stars. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sadness. No anger. Just peace. Harrison Caldwell had been my husband. The man I'd loved. The man I'd sacrificed for. The man who'd destroyed me. And now he was just a voice on a phone. A stranger from a life I used to live. I went back to work. Because that's what you do when you've built something bigger than your pain. You keep building.